What's up everybody, Sigma has been out for a little while now, and while he's undoubtedly an amazing hero to play, I find myself just as fascinated by his lore and all the subtle ties and connections he seems to have to other existing Overwatch factions and characters. Beyond just being a member of Talon, Sigma could actually end up answering some of the long-running questions we've had about the Overwatch universe. So in today's video, I'm going to cover all these secret story bits we learn with Overwatch's latest Hero Edition, and even have a few theories building off of them. This is Master Ian Gamer, and let's get into it. Now, at face value, Sigma's backstory is already pretty fantastic. His origin story specifically is hands down the best one we've gotten to date, and even outranks some of the full-scale animated shorts in my opinion, with its masterful direction, sound design, and storytelling. His black hole-induced insanity is a fascinating and unique direction to take a hero, which I'm sure will offer loads of storytelling potential as time goes on. But for now, there's already a few evident connections which Sigma has to existing maps and heroes. The first and perhaps most evident of these connections is to Xiang Interstellar. Now, as a quick summary for those of you who might not be too familiar with this group, Xiang Interstellar is the Chinese aerospace company which operates a number of different space-oriented projects and endeavors. Their most prominent presence in the Overwatch game are the maps Xiang Tower, which is their corporate headquarters, and Horizon Lunar Colony, which was established under Xiang's Lunar Ops program. From what we know about the Overwatch universe so far, this company seems to either lead or be associated with the vast majority of space-related operations, likely even including Sigma's black hole experiment, which took place on an international space station. Despite Xiang not being specifically mentioned in regards to this unnamed ISS or anywhere else in his hero bio, we actually have proof in-game that he has worked with the Chinese company at some point in the past. When spawning into the Horizon Lunar Colony map, Sigma has this voice line.
I never thought I'd be back here. It's beautiful. And cold.
This quote not only confirms that he's been to Horizon previously, but that he more than likely worked there for some length of time. The way he reminisces about the place makes it sound like he has distinct memories of the lunar base, and given his field of research, it's more than likely that he performed experiments here at one point in the past prior to his devastating accident. Because of this, he may even have some kind of relationship with Winston, Harold, and maybe even Hammond, since it's likely that they all would have spent time on Horizon together at some point in the past. Now, one other thing that I feel is worth mentioning is the space station hologram we see in the Xiang Tower Control Center map. A number of people have theorized that this is in fact the same space station on which Sigma conducted his experiment, and furthermore that the black hole incident is the cause of the critical failure which we see has taken place on it. However, if we look at the timeline of events, sadly it appears that this in fact isn't the case. In Sigma's bio, it specifically mentions that he'd been locked away in a government facility for years prior to Talon breaking him out. And from what we know about the space station failure, it was a relatively recent event in the Overwatch timeline. Recent enough, at least, to have media outlets discussing it in the news. So with the time gap of at least a few years between Sigma's black hole incident and the space station failure, it debunks any notion that Sigma is responsible. But even if Sigma isn't the answer to what's currently going down in space, his addition to the roster does help to flesh out and connect Xiang Tower to the greater storyline, with Winston and Wrecking Ball having previously been the only heroes tied to Xiang Tower, and that only being vicariously through Horizon. Depending on how closely Sigma worked with Xiang Interstellar in the past, he could very well now be the closest connected hero to Xiang Tower, and for all we know, he maybe even worked here or conducted experiments in this building at some point in the past. However, Xiang Interstellar is simply the most obvious tie Sigma has to existing lore. Digging even deeper, we end up with a second possible faction connection, this time to Volskaya Industries. Now again, this one might not be too surprising at first, considering Zarya's Graviton Surge Ultimate, but let's take a look at the exact details which play out between Sigma and Volskaya, because connections here are actually quite a bit more intriguing than you may think. First up is one of the most astonishing clues I've come across regarding Sigma, and it's not even a clue from Overwatch. It's from Heroes of the Storm. Now, I understand that anything said about Overwatch, or any of Blizzard's titles in Heroes of the Storm, isn't necessarily canon, but this one in particular is so bizarre that it definitely requires some consideration. One of Zarya's skins in Heroes of the Storm has a description which talks about the Tobelstein reactor she uses in her gun. The Tobelstein reactor is an emergent technology, and its full potential has yet to be tapped. Rumor has it that the Gravitic Harness is the next great advancement in energy projection. Gravitic Harness. What an oddly specific term to use. Where do I feel like I've heard something similar to that just recently?
Gravity is a harness. I have harnessed the harness.
Now, this one blew my mind when I first found out about it. For reference, according to the Internet Wayback Machine, this has been the official description for this Zarya skin in Heroes of the Storm since at least November 21st, 2016. That was nearly 3 years ago, and now we get a hero whose abilities are specifically quoted as harnessing gravity. Coincidence? I will say though that it's a bit unclear what exactly the Gravitic Harness referred to here is, given that we hear Sigma refer to gravity as being a harness prior to his black hole incident. I suspect that the Gravitic Harness was whatever he was working on that ended up going catastrophic on the ISS. It very well may have been the device which would have changed our understanding of the universe and revolutionized science if only it hadn't failed. Now again, given that this clue comes from Heroes of the Storm and is hella old, it's tough to say whether the Gravitic Harness mentioned is actually a reference to a canon thing in the Overwatch lore. It could very well have just been a random term some intern at Blizzard came up with when tasked with giving an arbitrary blurb for an arbitrary skin. But the immense similarity of its name to Sigma's own quoted description of his abilities makes it something that simply cannot be ignored. Let's assume for a minute that the Gravitic Harness is real within the Overwatch universe, and that it is in fact what Sigma was working on. According to this description, it's the next technological step past the Tobelstein reactor, meaning that Sigma would likely see what Zarya uses as an inferior version of whatever he'd been working on prior to his accident. Well, it just so happens that Sigma specifically acknowledges this in one of his voice lines, which only plays when he kills an enemy Zarya.
The Tobelstein's work remains flawed. Tragic.
This line verifies that Sigma not only is aware of the gravity device Zarya uses, but that he sees it as flawed technology. And beyond that, we actually learn something else incredibly fascinating from just this one line. When I first heard it, I thought Sigma was insulting the device specifically, saying that the work performed by the reactor is weak and therefore the device overall is flawed. But if we examine the grammar used in the game's official subtitles for this voice line, a slightly different meaning is revealed. The word Tobelsteins has the apostrophe after the S, meaning the word is possessive plural. Sigma isn't criticizing the work of the Tobelstein, as in the Tobelstein reactor and its capabilities, but rather the work of the Tobelsteins. Taking into account the full sentence, there is only one meaning which would logically make sense with this grammar. Sigma is criticizing a group of 2 or more people who all share the name Tobelstein. The reactor device must have been named after the family who created it, a family whom Sigma is presumably quite familiar with. My guess is that we're either looking at a pair of sibling inventors, or possibly even a parent-child inventor duo, and we know all this simply through the power of grammar. This does still raise a number of questions though. Who exactly are the Tobelsteins? How did they come up with their invention? What sort of relationship do they have with Sigma? The tone Sigma carries when delivering the voice line about the Tobelsteins sounds condescending.
The Tobelstein's work remains flawed. Tragic.
But it's unclear whether this is because of his post-accident insanity, or if he has genuine disdain for them. Perhaps them and Sigma were rivals, each racing to be the first to crack the secrets of harnessing black holes. Maybe Sigma despises how they were able to develop and seemingly mass market the Tobelstein reactor, which in his eyes is merely a fraction of what could really be achieved when it comes to gravity manipulation. Now, while I was researching what all has been revealed so far about the Tobelstein reactor, and Zarya and Volskaya Industries in general, I made a couple interesting discoveries. First is that if we take a look at the Sombra conspiracy web, yeah, remember this thing? We can actually see an unknown character connected to CEO Katya Volskaya. For years, the general consensus was that this may be Katya's husband, especially considering that we also see her daughter connected as well. However, the fact that her daughter is only connected to Katya and not the man always seemed a bit strange. But looking at the two hexagons connecting to the mystery man, one of them looks as if it might be a Tobelstein reactor. The image, unfortunately, is too low resolution to tell for sure one way or the other, but there is definitely a general shape similarity between it and the Tobelstein spray we have in-game for Zarya. If this is the case, then perhaps the man we see here is one of the Tobelsteins who invented the reactor. And if they're important enough to show up here on the web, they might end up playing some kind of greater role in the story later down the line. The second discovery I made regarding Volskaya is even more intriguing. In the Infiltration animated short, Sombra reveals that Katya Volskaya has been secretly borrowing Omnic technology to use in her company. Based on this information, is it possible that the technology used to make the Tobelstein reactor originated from the Omnics? There's actually a fair bit of evidence which suggests this might be the case. Currently on the Overwatch hero roster, there are 4 heroes which can consistently manipulate gravity. Zarya and Orisa both use variants of the Tobelstein reactor, Sigma has his black hole powers, but the 4th, who often goes forgotten, has unknown origins for his gravity manipulation, and that's Zenyatta. While his ability to levitate may have simply been a design choice to emphasize his spiritual nature, we don't actually know how it works within the scientific realm of the Overwatch universe. Many assume it's some kind of electromagnetism, or just Blizzard going full yada yada when it comes to logic, but what if instead it's some kind of gravity manipulation? I'm not saying that he's got a Tobelstein reactor in his butt, but it's possible that through his time spent with the other Omnic Shambali monks, he adopted the same kind of technology which Katya borrowed from the Omnics to make the Tobelstein reactor. Looking back at the Sombra web, this would also explain the connection between the mystery Omnic, Katya, and the mystery man. Katya borrowed Omnic technology from the mystery Omnic and then handed it off to one of the Tobelsteins, whom she's presumably quite close to, and in turn, he, along with whoever the other Tobelstein scientists are, developed the Tobelstein reactor. Coming back now to Sigma, this might actually further hint at more of his backstory. Given that Katya's involvement with the Omnics is still a secret in present day, Sigma almost certainly was unaware of the Tobelsteins using Omnic technology. Perhaps the spontaneous breakthrough they made after receiving this tech was what enabled them to develop the Tobelstein reactor before Sigma was able to develop anything based on his own research. If Sigma and the Tobelsteins really were competing to be the first to harness gravity, then perhaps them revealing their new reactor caused Sigma to desperately rush some of the crucial steps of his own work, thus leading to the black hole accident, which otherwise would have been avoided if only he had taken just a bit more time. I'll admit, at this point the theories I'm proposing are highly speculative. There unfortunately isn't enough evidence to say for sure that this is how it played out, but based on the few pieces of the puzzle we do have, it does seem like a viable possibility. I would love it if Blizzard uses Sigma as a way of expanding both Liu Chang Interstellar and Volskaya Industries, as both are factions which still have a ton of mysteries tied to them and haven't had many big developments recently. As many of you know, I have been keeping a close eye on Xiang Tower for a while now with the numerous wheelchair theory videos I've put out, but now with Sigma's introduction and his ties to both Liu Chang and Volskaya, I might have a lot more videos to make in the near future as Blizzard reveals more. However, in the meantime, I would love to hear your thoughts on Sigma, his ties to existing characters and factions, as well as where you think Blizzard will take him as a character. So be sure to leave your thoughts thoughts in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and share it with a friend if you really liked it. Subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit up the bell to never miss any of my future Overwatch content. This is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.